He's a product leader at PhonePe. He's actually has a very diverse sort of background. He's done everything from product marketing, strategy, and so great person to learn a lot about how to think about product, and specifically product in the context of India, because of the market share and sort of the audience pool that they be a fun session. We're gonna try to make the most of the 1 hour that we have. We'll do about a 40-minute sort of fireside chat, discuss a few things related to PhonePe. During that session, during that time, if you have any questions that come to your mind, feel free to type them in chat. We'll take the last 20 minutes for just Q&A, and that'll be when we'll take up all the questions and have Vishal answer them directly from you guys. So that's it. Let's get started. Vishal, just as context, maybe you've had a fascinating journey. Can you talk us a little bit, walk us through your journey, and what have been sort of the key highlights for you from a product lens in your journey?
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Great to see. I think lots of people are curious about, what product management is. And back then, when I started my career, which is like 22 years ago, honestly, there was no formal function called product management, right? And at some point in time when I started, and pretty much I think I've been working either startup or even when I've been working in multinationals, pretty much in a very siloed where we are doing our own innovations within India context. So pretty much my journey has been more like an entrepreneur throughout this thing. And when I got introduced to the product management function, I realized that, oh, this is what I was doing whole my life before this, before I knew how to name it. So I think product management is a very interesting function, right? From I think a definition, you'll never find a standard definition for it, because actually by the nature of this particular role, the definition of it changes based on the organization context, based on the organization life stage, and rightfully so, right? Because what you need as a core skill set at that point in time to take a particular product to be successful, a company to be successful, the skill set or the focus area changes, or the basically amount of time what you spend in a particular skill set changes. And I think it has been very, very enriching journey throughout my career, where I think I've been party to kind of, doing something way ahead of time. We did our first mobile-based payment in 2000 with Citibank, and basically that was, the feature phone era, and failed miserably because it was way ahead of time. To kind of, now creating success at PhonePe by literally solving for need for masses. So yeah, I think that's very brief about me as a background.
Yeah, so PhonePe caters to a very broad category of use cases, right? Everything from like paying to your sabji wala, all the way to buying gold, right? How did you, when you thought about market share, when you thought about sort of reach from a product perspective, how did you cater to such a broad audience, and what were some of the thought processes behind it?
See, when you're entering into any product area or any new bet, right, it is super important for you to kind of very clearly define, or at least have clarity in mind that what is the purpose and why are you doing this particular thing, right? Broadly, it is called strategy, right?
Yeah.
You need to have a right vision and then right strategy around it, right? That, hey, why are you entering a particular field? You need to have very clear vision or clarity around that. And then basically, once you're entering, what is the way you'll basically go and enter this particular market and create victory, right? When we were deciding on PhonePe, I think pretty much in the very early stage, we were very clear that we want to be entering. In fact, Samir and Rahul were very clear that they wanted to kind of start an organization which is very horizontal in nature, right? Which is catering to multiple needs. And choices were between browser and OS and payments, if you think about, right? All of these are like touching almost every part of your life in general. Payments came a very easy choice because it is in transaction path, and there were lots of white space available, unsolved problem. While the market was fairly crowded, I think the 50-odd wallet companies and whatnot. But there was one particular problem statement which is not solved, P2P, and again, I'm giving you details about that to understand what is the thought process, right? You need to identify a space, right, which has not been cracked for, or not been solved either efficiently or not been solved at all, right? So you can still enter a busy space and basically solve it right, solve it more efficiently, or you can actually find an unsolved problem. Luckily for us in this particular scenario, it was easy. P2P was an unsolved problem, and then basically while We're trying to figure out how to solve P2P using, IMPS and other options which are available. And then we stumbled upon UPI. And that's where basically we took a call saying that, hey, UPI seems like a great bet. And honestly speaking, ended up spending like literally lots and lots of time with, NPCI banks to kind of, make the system available, to scale this entire UPI platform. And of course, that early mover advantage, we always kind of, gave us, that's one of the reasons we are here where we are. Right. So now once you're entering into, let's say, for example, something is horizontal, right? Now you have a multiple choices. Consumer base of our scale, right? You can actually decide to do lots of stuff because people are visiting your app very often, much more often. How do you want to solve for it? And that's where basically I think the clarity in terms of the vision, how we thought about it came in, that we said that we want to basically democratize money relationship and accelerate basically journey with the money for every Indian. And if you look at journey with, money is send, spend, manage, grow, right? You start receiving and sending money, then start spending, and then you manage and grow. And we said that we'll go in this directions. And once we solve for send, then we solve for spend, manage and grow. I'll not go into too many details, but the reason I'm giving you that particular aspect is super important to understand that very early stage, you need to have a very clear picture in terms of how are you thinking about the product area, what you're kind of championing. You need to have a very clear reason, purpose. After that, you need to have a very clear mindset in mind that, hey, this is the sequence I'm going to follow, or this is the theme I'm going to follow, right? And once we have kind of zeroed in on send, spend, manage, grow, the company level choices or company level, this thing became very easy, right? Then we are very clear that, hey, we're going to solve for P2P and recharge and bill payment, and then for basically online acceptance, offline acceptance. From there, basically gold, mutual funds, and now basically we think about insurance and other stuff, right? So I think very proud of the fact that whatever we've written on our like 5-year-old deck, or when we did not know much about in terms of, how much we'll scale, but whatever we drew out as a, canvas, pretty much I think 80-90% of it, we are on track.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think one of the fundamental things about the payment ecosystem or anything finance related, right, is always sort of how do you build trust? Because money is one of those things that requires trust between two parties, right? Am I going to use this platform? Is my money actually going to get to the place I expect it to, or is the transaction? What are some things that you did at PhonePe to build this trust with users?
Yeah. See, I think one thing is very clear when it comes to trust, right? Or honestly speaking, any customer core metrics around delight. You cannot, buy it, right? You have to earn it, and you cannot claim it,
Yes.
right? You have to literally, basically, they have to give it. And I think once you get that it is not something which is your right, and it is not something which you can basically claim. I think you start making lots of choices around those things where you're saying that, hey, I think understanding first thing that you are basically people are trusting with your money, which means you need to be very, very serious about everything what you do, right? We take, for example, decisions like I'll not let you have the transaction rather than failing the transaction or making putting a money stuck. So I might, let's say, for example, the moment we see a success rate of a particular bank going down below a certain percentage, we stop that transaction, right? And customer may complain that, hey, PhonePe is not working, the other way app is working, and we're completely comfortable with that in our this thing, because I know that one person might be seeing that, but one person might be seeing that, hey, if I would have done this transaction, I would have had a bad experience. My money would have got stuck. There would have been unknown, status over there of the payment. Yeah. And it's completely okay to kind of lose that business as long as you are like very clear that, hey, what my priorities are. And typically it's always customer first, right? For every organization. I think most of people do that, and most of people try to follow that. But I think putting that into core DNA is something I think we've done really, really well.
Yeah. How did PhonePe scale up so quickly? Like what is the tell us what happened?
So I think, again, if there was a formula, probably everybody would have kind of replicated it, right? There's no formula to kind of success specifically in a startup ecosystem, or for that matter, any product capability or feature or whatever you're rolling out. It starts from every small thing to a large company or a large bet. Lots of things have to come together, but I typically would like to put 2 or 3 things here is in terms of primarily. One is the team, of course. Always, it is all about the team. Idea comes times a dozen. You need a team which can execute it really, really well, right? Bunch of us were ex-Flipkart, basically pretty much were. But in fact, I was in Flipkart and when
Yes.
moved to PhonePe when Flipkart acquired PhonePe. So pretty much, I think we had seen the scale and we helped basically, lots of us basically were contributing to Flipkart growth. So we knew what it requires, what it takes to build a large company. And I think what mistakes not to make and what good things to do. There was a strong learning there. I think we followed up very, very quickly. That was one part of it. The second part of it, I think the way we thought about our org design, right? One of my favorite subject.
Yes.
How to design your org is super critical. And I think very early stage, myself and Rahul, who's the CTO and co-founder, we had a discussion that we are not going to add product managers just for the heck of it, or basically we will keep it, we'll delay it as long as possible. In fact, honestly speaking, any startup for that matter, right? And then saying that in with lots of product manager in this thing, any startup, anybody with manager in their title, don't hire them.
Yes.
In the early stage, right? Because you don't need them. Typically, in lots of startups, right? The founders themselves act as a product manager, right? I was part of a early stage team because I worked with Samir and Rahul pretty much earlier, so they knew what I stand for. I was more hired as a basically founding member team rather than the product manager. In fact, for the first 3 years, we had like 4 product managers in the company.
Yeah.
That should give you some idea in terms of how to think about it. But I think once we have defined that, hey, what we want to make sure is that we don't want product managers to be translators, right? And I think that's where the meat is, right? Typically, again, product management is a 360-degree function. You need to do whatever it requires to kind of take the product to success. You are the one probably who is looking at the entire elephant while the others are looking at trunk and the tail and other stuff, right? The famous story. But product manager is one who has probably a view to the entire elephant. But then if you start translating, right, then basically everybody is looking at their piece and then imagining what the full picture is through you, which is very inefficient way, right? They also need to understand that this is the elephant. So the translation should not happen. The product manager should be doing more of a thought leadership and giving you view that, hey, today this elephant is sitting in this room, but it can go in jungle. Right, giving you in terms of long-term view and the variance which can happen and what are the various scenarios which can happen, rather than telling you that, hey, that guy who is holding the trunk is saying that, hey, this is the tail and this is the distance. No, I think probably required in large organization. Again, that's why I said the product management as a function has a different definition in different organization, and it rightfully so. So it may be required in the large organization where people need to do translation, but in the early stage companies, or in fact, one should avoid it as much as possible and do it when there's no choice left.
Yeah, that's actually a good segue into sort of my next question, which is, in your opinion, what is product management? I think that is also one of the things that is very confused amongst a lot of people. And I think that is a large portion to do with how different product teams and different organizations work. So depending on who you talk to, they give you a different definition. But I think you've sort of had the experience at small stage, early stage, large companies like Flipkart. You've probably seen product management in various different setups. According to you, can you define what product management is?
See, again, probably I've entered into that area itself in my previous thing. If you think about definition is not fixed. It's highly fluid. I don't complain about it. If you think about probably with different context, I think I will do different. I'll put different definitions to it. In fact, if I look at last 6 years, how definitions have evolved, or even today, right, when we are operating into multiple verticals, like gold is very different problem than insurance, and insurance is a very different problem than payments or offline payments, right? You need different kind of skill set or different kind of spikes at that point in time to be able to manage that. So product management, if I have to sum it up, I think is one person who is basically looking at the larger picture, right? Everybody has basically a biased view, right? Probably product management is one function which should try to take as unbiased view as possible, right? While people will question you, hey, where is the impact? And people will think you, where is the vision and where is the customer experience and what is happening on the tech scalability and all those things in terms of responsibility and accountability starts falling into your lap. But one thing I think which is non-negotiable in my mind from a product manager contribution point of view, that you need to have a larger picture, right? That is super critical. If you cannot articulate, right, what is this product going to evolve into, what is this product going to cater into, and what are the various variants which will be required, I think you're failing as a product manager. That's one aspect of this. Second aspect of it, again, you need to have very, very keen sense of customer experience, right? If you're not able to understand what your customers may want, and again, you cannot, honestly speaking with experience, you cannot know that by talking to customers, and you cannot know that by looking at data. Again, if both were possible, again, many people would have built, made lots of successful startups. I think it is the combination of instinct, it's a combination of gut, it's a combination of your exposure, it's a combination of, I think, your ability to try out and learn from it and quickly iterate and pivot to the right problem statement. But again, consumer has to be in the center, right? I think these two things are, honestly speaking, non-negotiable for me in terms of the this thing. The third one is, of course, the impact. You cannot take your eyes off impact. Right? You can paint a great picture and basically build a great narrative and maybe raise lots of funding to start with. But if you aren't delivering, right, the right thing for customer, you'll not make money. And if you're not making money, again, you're not building a good business, right? Then you rather go for philanthropy or something else. If you're into product management as a corporate function or basically as your own startup, end of the day, you need to create impact. You are supposed to be building a sustainable, structurable goodness for your stakeholders, right? These are the three core things which I would like to say is super, super critical. Then the word is like, completely this thing. For example, in an early stage company, if you are building something which is a consumer focus, you would like to have a, product manager, seed product manager group, which is very, very heavy on basically UX. If you're going and building a B2B SaaS company, let's say, for example, then you would like to basically get someone who is very, very strong on technology, right? So again, product managers does cater to, if you think about technology, business, right? Pretty much, data, marketing, almost every aspect of it, right? And while everyone has their own view, business thinking, all typically, and by design short term, tech is thinking scale, but not necessarily the features or in terms of what the evolution can happen. Your job is to basically, I think, articulate, once you know the larger picture, right? And once you have the basically customer understanding and you have clarity in terms of what you're solving for, trust me, if you have these three pieces in place, the rest of the things fall in place because that's your BAU work, right? Your day work is basically interacting with people around. And to be able to explain these three things, how are you thinking about it? How they should, what understanding they should have around it? And if they have that, right, then basically, trust me, I think people deliver. The best way to scale a product manager himself is basically make everyone part of your product management thinking, product thinking. And if you can instill that product thinking in your stakeholders, right, that's where basically you have won the game. Because then the company moves. And that's one of the, I think, answer which I was kind of trying to allude to, that the reason, one of the third reason which I said that, hey, we scaled as an organization because we kind of instilled product management or product thinking into every function. So it was not by choice. It was not an afterthought, right? It was by design, how we kind of designed the entire theme or the structure around it.
Yeah, so that brings me to another sort of follow-up interesting question, which is that can you talk a little bit about sort of how the product teams are set up? And, I imagine that this product thinking is instilled at all levels, right? Which is, it starts from the most junior PM all the way to you. Everybody in the middle who's working with all stakeholders strives to instill this product thinking, right? How do you facilitate that? Like, what is it because how the teams are structured? Is it because who you hire? Maybe we'll start with what are the skills in the best PM that you have? And maybe we'll start with the most junior PM, right? At a junior PM, what are the skills you look for?
See, again, I think typically if you think about, right, I'll try to give you our basically assessment framework. Assessment is a flawed process, right? You're trying to judge someone in like few hours of discussion in terms of how the person can kind of contribute or deliver. But that's how it is. You can't have any other mechanism. You don't have ways to kind of bring people into the company for 2 months and then kind of take a call after that. Work is a lose-lose situation in that scenario, right? So what best you can make out of during those 4 or 5 or 7 hours of interaction? And I think typically if you try to kind of define product management and go into the basics, nuts and bolts of it, right? While I said that these are the 3 key attributes in terms of larger picture, customer, and the impact side of it. End of the day, we are problem solvers, right? I think so. Typically, what we look out at is that, hey, are you great problem solver? And trust me, we're not doing rocket science here, but at the same point in time, uh, I think one of the lines what we have, right? One of our cultural ethos is that, simplicity breeds scalability,
Mm.
right? I think the people can make, lots of small things complex by thinking complex, right?
Mm.
And it's super important when you're solving a problem, right? How you are able to basically bring a structure to it, divide it into small pieces, or make it simple, keep it simple, because it's very easy to make a complex problem or keep a complex problem, right? And most of the people end up doing that. There are so many things to solve for, and the fact is that life is multidimensional problem, so is business.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
multi-dimensional problem. I think the art is that, hey, can you look at one dimension at a time, or can you find a cohorts of those dimensions in terms of what are important for you, and basically identify the problem statement around that, right? And I think that's where it becomes super critical. And so that's the problem solving aspect of it, right? So we try to look at, those kind of aspects, that, hey, how good problem solver you are. And yes,
Mm.
typically we don't ask, what will happen if I drop an egg from, 13th floor or 14th floor or whatnot, right? I think, or try to ask general practical questions around, how will you solve this problem? And what we look out for is that, what is the structure, what is the thought process which is coming around that. The second skill, what we look out for, is the product thinking, which goes into my larger picture that, hey, okay, solving this problem, tell me contours of it, right? What is your imagination like? What is your understanding like? And again, try to choose a very neutral topic, or basically topic where the candidate is experienced on rather than what we are experienced on.
Yes.
If you want to give any unfair advantage, it should be to the candidate, right? Always. Uh, so try to basically give him or her basically that, hey, now tell me, if this is the problem you're solving, how deep you can think around, how holistic you can think around it, right? Because that thinking, if you can think deep, and deep is not necessarily kind of, going to the nth level of details, but going to I think, try to cover as many dimensions as possible. The coverage is more important.
Nuances.
Yeah, the nuances around it, and to be able to think, what will it mean to basically competition, whether distribution will happen cheap or not, right? Whether it will be, expensive, the business models what you're thinking are sustainable or not, whether you'll be able to scale or not, right? So multiple aspects of it, right? And nuances around the problem solving itself. So that's the second thing what we try to solve for. The third is, of course, goes without saying, we're a tech product company, take a very strong pride in that. We need to look at, basic technology skills. Don't expect people to code there, but definitely expect people to kind of be able to at least have the conversations with the engineers, to be able to abstract out that, hey, if you're talking about something, a problem solving, you cannot be talking like completely in Greek, and basically uh, the relation, there has to be, some bit of resemblance in terms of what you're trying to talk to each other, right? And I think that's the third part of it. The fourth is, of course, business, super critical. You need to have understanding of the business side of it, which takes care of my impact. So through input category, if you think about, or even third one is also input category. The fourth is output, in terms of the head, can you think of impact? The fifth one is typically, if you think about the general customer experience, right? Whether you can do UX or not. And then the culture part of it, right? That, hey, are you culturally fit to be coming at PhonePe or not? Right? Because we take very strong pride in our culture. Organization's all about culture, what DNA you instill, and it's all about, what basics you're kind of, creating in that organization. And it's super important when you're hiring people who are at least, if not 100%, at least 80-90% in terms of similar mindset, right? So that rest of the things can fall in there. And interesting thing, what you would notice here, that I did not talk about domain.
Yes.
Right? I don't care about domain, to be very honest, right? Product management is a generalist function, right? Any smart person can learn a domain from a Pareto point of view. 80% of that you can learn in next 2 to 3 months, and there will be enough people around you to help you out.
Yes.
The domain is important. I'm not saying that your knowledge is not important, but I believe that, in the new era, knowledge is on the tap, right? So what is more important is to be able to kind of understand, how are you thinking about basically how good problem solver you are, right? Domain, if I think more than domain, what is more important, the nature of problems what you've seen. If you've seen a different exposure, so I think for junior candidates becomes a little, I think, less relevant. And I look at lots of, this thing is the early stage people. But if I think from, largely senior people, right?
Yeah.
I think it becomes super important, the kind of nature of problems what you've seen, which can be in depth or which can be in breadth, right? Somebody who has seen, let's say, for example, a retail problem to e-commerce problem to a financial fintech, whatever, I think is useful person because has seen three different. Someone who has seen within e-commerce, right? A supply chain to basically a order management system to accounting to everything is important. Or someone who has just done one layer but done marketing around it, done basically brand building, early stage customer acquisition, 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and being part of follow-up journey. I think your exposure across multiple dimensions is super critical. And that plays out more importantly than the domain.
Got it. It's very interesting, actually. You talked about this assessment framework. These are literally the 6 skills. One additional skill that, so we have something called the Know Yourself test. And the idea of this is free. You can just go to Appraised and take the test. It's putting yourself in a shoe of a product manager for 40 minutes and seeing what you come out with. And this is non-judgmental test. You don't have to share it with anyone. It's just for your consumption. But it's literally all the 5 dimensions you talked about. And the one additional dimension that we focus on is something called product sense. So just looking at a product, can you identify what a good or a decent or a bad product feature is? And things like that. So it's very interesting that actually we have a very similar sort of assessment framework. One thing that I want to ask a sort of the follow-up question to this is, so you said product management is sort of a generalist function, and one of the most critical skill is ability to problem solve and dissect a problem and go from there. How does that fit into sort of, and you said domain is not important. Most people around you will kind of help you learn that very quickly. But how does the product folks at PhonePe work alongside designers, engineers? What does that actually entail at PhonePe? How is the team structured?
Oh, that's another very interesting topic, I think, and we take, I think, strong pride in as an organization. I think very early on, we kind of got into pod structure. I think fairly common terminology, but I think definitely, I think we can say that probably we nailed it right. What we do is basically, for a lack of better, this thing, I am using a cliched startup within a startup example.
Yeah.
Right. What we do is we create this pod, right? And this pod is self-sufficient. So there are backend engineers, business people, product managers, designers, pretty much every function except for your horizontal corporate function, which is HR, finance kind of people. Otherwise, every other skill is in the room or is in the team, right? And typically this pod sizes, we try to keep it very, very small, right? 20 to 30. And if it is growing beyond, we try to break it into different pods. The advantage of that particular thing is it's a very small group, right? And I think any of you, if you would have worked in a startup kind of this thing, one of the biggest advantage of working in a startup, right, is basically there's no information asymmetry.
Correct.
Everyone knows what is happening, right? From what VC discussions are happening, whether we're thinking about marketing, whether basically something happened or not. Everybody knows everything because typically you're sitting in one single room or one single floor, right? And I think we realize that, hey, organizations start becoming slow, or organizations start kind of becoming a little difficult to navigate with, right? And as the size grows because of information asymmetry. I think once we understood that, then basically we kind of said that, hey, the only way to solve for this and nail for this is this, basically make this set of people sit together like a startup, right? And I think because they're working together on a day-to-day basis, right? Sitting next to each other, then honestly speaking, this question doesn't matter, right? Because how product manager and designers and engineers are interacting in a 30 people startup, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? You don't care about it. And typically, if you think about that also helps us, right? Because there are lots of business verticals what we operate in today, right? Right from recharge, which is like table stakes and a very big scale, to kind of trying to do something around, let's say for example, investment. Right? And you're trying to figure out a completely new, 0 to 1 market fit, all those stuff. And how do you operate these two heterogeneous teams using simple process methodology? Idea is you should not actually, if you're trying to do, operate these two teams in a similar way, you're basically killing the process, killing the entire agility, or basically even innovation or whatever can happen. The moment you have these small teams, honestly speaking, we don't care how you are operating, as long as you're operating within the group, right? Which is like completely empowered group from tech, product, business, operations, people sitting together to each other, right? You know what is required. I think then basically what we do is we define the org level strategy, which basically translates into the respective pod strategy. And once you know your what north star you're chasing, then you're fully equipped from a talent point of view to be able to move fast.
Right? How does communication between pods happen?
So
I
communication,
imagine otherwise people are reinventing the wheel, right? Inside the pod.
not really. So again, I think because we are a very tech heavy company, tech product heavy company, there are bunch of, let me put it this way, that making sure that nothing is getting reinvented is dependent on architects and product managers, right? So
Yes.
architects are one who are basically building at our scale. Basically, we don't build anything at small scale, right?
Yes.
Even if you have to launch a small feature, it has to be, a good capability around it, because we want to solve problem in a very, very big way, which can be actually solved within that business or across businesses. So architects are generally in the know-how that, hey, what is getting built, right? So they make sure that they're not retaining. They're
Basically,
not
there's somebody who's thinking about the platform at large, and then there's pods that kind of build on top of
right.
it.
And product management, again, it's a small team still, and we intend to keep it that way. I think from that lens, again, it's a small group, so people are able to kind of talk to each other. So there are those, monthly team meetings which are happening, or people are publishing their roadmaps on a regular basis. So I think that's an easier problem to solve. I think the larger problem, which we realize that is a difficult problem to solve, and that's where we created certain things, right? Is in terms of that, hey, how do you make sure that if people are working in those silos, they're still delivering consistent experiences? Right? When you're talking about so many businesses and every designer, everybody's thinking around those things. How do you ensure that it's a consistent experience and in line with the overall strategy? And that's why basically we have only two standard processes which are defined, right, at the pod intervention level, other than the strat refresh, what we do. One is basically any feature what you're rolling out, right? We need to have a design review of that, right? So basically it's generally design first, right? We try to, whenever we're kind of developing feature, and please don't get me that every time when a button is getting added, it requires a review. But typically when you're building a new feature or a capability, we take a year-long view to it, that, hey, how it will look like a year out from here. Do the design first on that, and then basically do a design review between me, Samir, and Rahul, right? And then basically we say that, okay, if this design is good to go, right, that ensures that basically, one of us is basically always glued into it, and we are making sure that we are consistent. That also provides us an opportunity to kind of, depending on, I think a particular pod stage, to intervene or understand how are they doing it, or what is the rationale behind it. The only other basically cadence what we try to do is something like, monthly review. And again, depending on the life stage, right? When it's a 0 to 1, the monthly review is not about numbers. The monthly review is not about balance scorecard, right? Monthly review is all about what bets, what is failing, what is not failing, what punts you are not willing to take, what punts we can help you take, kind of discussion with. And while the same discussion basically will be utilized for a 10 to 100 from a pure balance scorecard point of view, that, hey, how your core metrics are moving and all those things. I think these two interventions actually helps and allows us to kind of make sure that while we are venturing into multiple kinds of businesses, which are very disparate in nature and disparate in their life stages, still be able to kind of maintain the consistency and sanity around it.
Got it. Cool. So I think we have in a couple of minutes, we're gonna start taking questions. You guys can get your questions ready. One last question I have for you, Vishal, outside of the Q&A that we do, is what is how does you said you take big bets, right? What is the distribution of the roadmap? Like, you guys have things that you're doing. What percentage of those are big bets? What percentage of those are sort of increments and optimizations to the current product lines? How do you guys think about that distribution to kind of keep the market share going, right?
No, I think a slightly different way to look at it, right? I think once you venture into a bet, I think seldom it is happening that you can get out of that particular business line ever, right? I think your focus or priorities, or basically how you prioritize within those buckets, changes. That's why basically we've been very thoughtful around, generally we're very, very thoughtful around how to kind of, start on a new bet or create a new, right? Because every time we create a pod, we know that, hey, we are investing for a long term into this particular business line.
Yeah. So how do you get that confidence? What goes into it?
I think gut and experience of the core team. I think bunch of us are like Samir staff. If I look at it, pretty much like 40 plus, seen reasonable side of it in terms of our share of success and failures. And most of us either have been like kind of an entrepreneur in early stage, or basically someone like me who has been like throughout entrepreneur. So I think gives you some bit of sense. Honestly speaking, I don't know the right answer. This thing, but I think credit goes to Samir a lot on that. I think he's a very keen sense of, I think, what will shape and what will not shape.
Hmm.
I think he's been able to kind of rein all of us, our excitements, and basically make sure that we're focused. That's super important for an organization. I think the moment I'll give you just one brief into it, right? When we start our year, we say that what all things will not do. That's our first question in that meeting
Yes.
this
Yes.
year, right? I think that makes it, I think, probably, gives you a hint in terms of how focused we are in terms of choosing our bets. And once you, I think, choose on your bet, then basically you have to go very, very deep into it and commit
Yeah.
it. It's always in it to win it mindset, right? You may have your shares of failure or success. I think more often success than failure for us. But there have been instances where we've learned and we've realized that, hey, it has not worked out the way it should have been working out, or the way we thought. But then when you're going into the 0 to 1 stage, is largely learn fast, fail fast, right? So you know it fast enough to be able to kind of take that call. And I think we take pride in, okay, this year we stopped 2 product areas, and then that's a good outcome, right?
Yes.
Because I think most of the time people are committed to kind of this thing and basically not taking the hard calls, right? I think at an organizational level, we are completely okay stopping something, right? If it is not working out, and then basically continue to deploy your maximum energy towards the right things which can create the right impact.
Yeah. If there were 3 things you can say that make PhonePe special, what are those?
Culture, people, because of the culture, right? And I think the kind of impact what you can create in every Indian's life, right? I think the opportunity is massive. The at the scale what you're playing, the scale is the part, I think, which is most exciting. If you're an engineer, the kind of scale what you're dealing with, you'll never get anywhere. If you're a product manager, the kind of scale what you're solving, the problems at scale what you're solving, again, can never be there, right? You solve one problem really well, and basically, let's say, for example, solve for insurance coverage for middle and lower pyramid level. I think you've contributed a lot to the society, right? So I think, yeah, these 3 are the things: culture, people, and the scale.
What are 3 things unique? How would you describe your culture in 3 words?
I think honest. I think honest does cover this thing. Bias for impact, right, is the second one. We have 13 values, by the way. So
Nice.
and each one of our actually those are like super this thing. Every one of those are very dear to kind of drop off. So you put me in the spot here.
Yes. What are the 3 most ones? The three that are like top of mind for you at
Yeah,
all?
so honest
Very
covers
deep in the
basically.
DNA.
Yeah, honest covers basically because the kind of reputation what we've built across our stakeholders, right? Be it basically our competition or businesses what we are operating. We are seen as the ecosystem player, right? Everybody likes it and respects us for the thought process what we have. We don't basically go and hurt anybody's profit pools just because we can, right? We build structural businesses. The second thing is, as I said, right, impact. We are very thoughtful around whatever we are solving for. I think thoughtful is the second one. I'll say rather. I think we are very thoughtful. Honestly, I think again one of those cliched lines, right? You need to think slow to run fast, right? I think it does play out. I think while think slow, more than think slow is, I think holistic, right? If you're thinking holistic, then basically you know what choices you're making at the runtime, and because you have those dimensions being available, I think chances of you making a mistake reduces significantly. You can still make a mistake, but there's the second one, and the third one is, I think, impact.
Got it. Awesome. We're gonna start taking questions. I'm gonna run a quick poll. You guys should answer this. What have been your key takeaways from this session? Would love to see what you kind of learned from this. While you're doing that, I'm just gonna skim through questions that you guys have put in chat and ask start with the most common ones to address the biggest questions that have been asked here. So Vishal, I think the consistent question is, do you guys hire junior PMs? If yes, what do you look for? I think this is the common question, I think, across a lot of folks. Maybe we can start there.
Yes, so last year we realized that, okay, one of the biggest problem statement, I think, which I faced when I was building the product team at PhonePe is it's a very niche function, right? And definitions are not standard. So to be able to find the right talent is super, super important. And I think your success ratio, I'm sure if you any one of you are into the interview side of it, is like 1:100 or even
Yes.
lesser, right? So it's very difficult to find the right set of people, and it is super important for you to hire as per your org life stage. So
Mm.
yes, I think at some point in time we reached that life stage, I think last year, where we started looking at APMs for two reasons, right? One is, I think, realize that, hey, there's not enough talent available. It's better to
Yes.
probably get someone from the someone really fresh, and then basically help them mold into our, I think, definition of product management, and basically both contribute to the function as well as contribute to the entire ecosystem, right? I'm sure that lots of those product managers will basically kind of go and join other companies, right? So with that, this thing, we started APM program last year, I think. So this is, I think, we are now looking at the third batch hiring, which is happening in few of the campuses. So yes, we do hire. Typically, again, what we look out for, because there are few things which is tricky to look out in a very early stage freshers. So
Mm.
what we try to do is, again, problem solving and product thinking. We largely focus on that, back with a case study which kind of tries to give us aspect on the other side of it. So that's how we look at APM hiring. Uh, I think, honestly speaking, very, very proud of how our APMs have done so far, right? I think very happy to say that, hey, we are probably creating an institute, and hopefully, basically, we are not feeding to the ecosystem yet. I would like to retain all of them. But I think, because there's no better learning than the on-the-job learning, to be very
Yes.
honest, right? And when you are bringing them in, and when you're bringing them in with a very clear picture that, hey, now is the time where basically you can invest. Existing product leaders can start investing into one more person. We have gotten map from that, because it is about investing into somebody's career, right? It's not
Yes.
about what company needs. If you're getting any fresher for that matter, and any function for that matter, right? You are building or shaping that person's career, and you need to be super serious about it. If you
Absolutely.
can't do justice to it, you should not hire. Because it will be lose-lose situation. You'll spoil somebody's career, and that person will not deliver to you also. So I
Absolutely.
think the reason we delayed APM hiring, for the very clear reason that, hey, we did not have time. I think the moment we realized that, hey, now we have time, probably, where each one of my team members, or basically the product leaders, can basically start contributing, right? And that's why we said that, hey, why not basically let's get people and start mentoring them. Played out really, really well.
Mm.
But again, it's a cycle, right? You need to figure out what is the right hiring cycle and what is the right kind of hiring pace. Because I think one thing which I'm very clear on is, lean and mean machine works much better. Product managers, for the right reason, if you bring them in, start creating work, because that's their job. But if you get too many, they'll start creating busy work.
Yes.
Right.
Got it. The next question, which is very sort of across the board, a lot of folks have asked is there any specific background you look for? Like, somebody is a BBA, somebody is a business analyst, somebody is in sales. When you look for APM hiring, what are the backgrounds you look for?
Typically, we look out for engineering background, because being very candid about it, some bias in that front. End of the day, you need to kind of, a good percentage of your time, at least 30 to 40% of your time, goes in talking to engineers, right? Because whatever problem you're solving, end of the day, engineers are the one who are building it, right? And if you're not able to articulate that and explain it to them, it becomes difficult. So by education, I think we have seen that engineers work. So
Mm.
fresher, again, I'm talking about, right?
Mm.
Someone who has been into product and has exposure, right?
Yeah.
For product management, then we don't care about any of those things, right? In
Mm.
terms of the
Mm.
previous either degrees or whatnot, right? But in fresher, you have to use certain proxies, right? And in that
Mm.
particular thing, we do use proxy both in terms of engineering as a background, and I think business management also as a background, right?
Got it.
Given that at our scale, we need to basically look for both the spikes. People coming in, you can teach someone product management, but if you have to teach all skills together, becomes a little tricky.
Yes. Yeah, makes sense. I think the one other common question is, do you hire, you said you hired from college campuses. You probably hire from a few campuses. Do you have an off-campus opportunity for somebody who wants to become an APM?
I think we do. typically, I think at the pace what we're hiring, and right now, I don't think so. We're looking to hire lots of APMs at this point in time. We're looking to kind of, in fact, not hire anymore from, I think, very clear picture that, hey, uh, I think let's build what we've signed up for.
Yeah.
It's super important. But again, there's always opportunity. And we've had lots of lateral APMs. It's not that we've not, right? We've had lots of APMs. And one can always kind of, drop a mail, go to our website and apply to those positions, or basically connect with me or any other product leader in the LinkedIn, and then basically can get into that.
Understood. Cool. Then there's a few questions around how can you transition into product management? I'll talk a little bit about that. I think there's 3 or 4 people that have asked that question. There are multiple ways, and Vishal, you can also chime in with your thoughts on this. But basically, I think the best, there are 3 sort of typical paths you can take to transition to product management. I think one is, if you're already in a small company, an internal transition is possible. That's an opportunity you can take. You have the best shot there to basically try to prove what your skill set is. I'd say that percentage is extremely small because it's extremely hard to do internal transitions, especially as the company size grows. I think the second option is, there are platforms like us, Appraise, which is very, very job focused. So we train you for all the right skills required for you to excel in the job and help you break into that. One of the fundamental challenges that Vishal also spoke about is, when you want to break into product management as an APM, we need to be able to understand what your skill set is, but also be able to understand the kind of work you can deliver, right? How much can you execute? And in the absence of any prior experience, it's very hard to gauge that. So one of the things that we do at Appraised is, during the 4 months that you are in the program, you actually solve real problem statements. You build an entire portfolio of your work. That makes it easy for companies like PhonePe to see whether this person has the capability of being a product manager, even if they don't have prior product experience. And then the third route is that people take is MBAs. I am biased towards not doing MBAs for a few reasons, because I think it is truly for the privileged few who can take a break for 2 years, spend boats of amounts of money to actually pay for an MBA. It's not just the fees of MBA, but for 2 years, you also are not drawing a paycheck. Versus programs like Appraised, you can actually do it part-time alongside your work. You don't have to take a break. And I actually think that losing 2 years of not working, like Vishal said, the best way to learn and grow is to actually just do it, right? That also has a downside when you do an MBA. There are some other advantages of an MBA, but from a product management perspective, I feel like it's a long stretch. Also, an MBA typically has more generic skills that they teach you. So some percentage of MBAs lead to product management, but you can also do more focused way of going into just product management. If it's very clear to you, that's where you want to be. So I think these are typical 3 ways most people enter the product management space. It definitely is a chicken and egg problem. There is no denying that. There is no degree which says you're a certified product manager, but there are lots of companies who will say, I will only hire if you have previous experience, right? So how do you kind of break out of that? And so you have to go above and beyond. And that's actually a good reflection of you becoming a product manager, because that's what you're going to do in your job also. You have to go above and beyond. You have to find, lots of times you don't have data to break down your problem. You have to think in multiple dimensions. You have to work with multiple stakeholders. You have to use your gut. You have to use your instinct. You have to use your data. All these are things that you have to hustle through. And in a very meta statement, you also have to hustle to become a product manager first. So I think these are some ways to kind of be a product manager. Anything else you want to add, Vishal? Please feel free to add to this.
No, I think you're right. Honestly speaking, if you think from I think business management is the gating criteria for filtering out freshers.
Yes.
Experienced product manager doesn't matter, right? I think I will not look at. I think if maybe at the max can use it for tiebreaker when 2 people are exactly equal on every other thing, which is impossible technically speaking.
Yeah.
You look at good product manager, right? And good product manager does not need to back him being good or her being good through the degrees or the background, right? It's a core product skills. I think one thing which people miss out on, right, is when they're looking at it, hey, I want to become product manager. Make sure that you understand what product management is before thinking about that. It's not the grass is greener on the other side. It is far more nuanced job than the otherwise. And typically the best or easiest way, again, I've seen people transitioning seamlessly or in a better way, is through doing the basically transformation within that company, or getting that,
Yes.
getting the role into the same company, because you know the company, you know the culture, so it becomes a little easier. There's at least one less learning or two less learning. You may probably learn the domain also, so third less learning, and you can basically focus on learning the core skill, which is the product management. So look out for, I think, something which is upskilling yourself through various kind of courses. And second one is basically definitely trying to kind of see if you have an opportunity within the organization.
Yeah. We're gonna take two more questions. One is, what is the next best thing or the next big thing that PhonePe is focused on?
I think, honestly speaking, it's still kind of, we just scratched the surface, to be very honest, right? We built a massive captive base. Right now, if you think about, with 400 plus million customers being registered with us, right? And literally, average customer is transacting 40 times a month with us, right? I think so. I think we've got the captive base. From here onwards, if you think about, I think it is all about building on that captive base, right? And solving for financial services, right? India is like so underpenetrated on every dimension of financial services, right? From your insurance to basically lending to, wealth. And each one of those are basically does help people, right? In one way or the other, right? So these are important things. And because of the either complexity or lack of distribution, because people are not able to distribute at their scale, or because of not the right customer experiences around it, right? It has not been penetrated. I think the biggest journey for us in next 1.5 2 years is kind of cracking the financial services at scale. I think doing fairly well on insurance already. I think we ventured that into 1.5 years ago, and hopefully basically we'll be able to repeat the story for other two axes also.
Got it. Last question. Maybe we have time for one more question, but I imagine you guys hire from sort of tier 1 colleges, but you obviously also have a market for, you penetrate into tier 2, tier 3. Do you guys plan to hire from tier 3 colleges, get access to tier 3 students? Like, how do you think about that?
See, again, that's the tricky one, right? Because when you're building a team, again, and as I said, we are always interested in building a lean and mean. So it's not like, we are hiring by batches.
Correct.
We are looking out for, a right number, and that number is, honestly speaking, not like, doesn't go into like multiple double digit kind of this thing. It will be, I think, at the best lower double digit, or many times single digit also. Right? And in that particular scenario, again, you don't have time to be able to kind of go and reach out to everywhere, right? I think that being said, there's lots of lateral hiring we do, right? Which is basically non-entry level PMs, right? APMs are the one where basically I think we need to be slightly choosy, or basically, I think fresher, honestly speaking, while valuable in terms of, this thing, you have to use certain proxies and filter out, right?
Yes.
Hard prices, can't do much about it. But I think once you have experienced product, right? And once you experience the product management, I think that's where then basically, honestly speaking, it doesn't, no filter gets applied. We don't apply a filter on college. We don't apply a filter on gender. We don't apply a filter on anything, right? I think if a product management is something similar to how you build your any business management batch, right? You want it to be as diverse as possible. You want people to come from different quarters, because these are the one people who are like kind of trying to guess, hey, this is what customer is thinking. Yes. And everyone is homogeneous, then trust me, you're only thinking about 5% of, right? So you want to get as diverse a set as possible.
Actually, I want to, I'm going to talk to you separately in a different conversation, but, one of the things that, and I've heard this from every founder that I speak to, which is getting to tier 2 and tier 3, they have desire to do that, but they don't have bandwidth to, because the scale is very large and the teams are not equipped to do that. And how do you find proxies to identify good talent in that market? And actually one of the things that bases that feedback, we now launched is something called Embark Pro, which is helping you land into program management, analytics, business operations. These are specifically for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, where we'll do all the filtration, we'll do all the upskilling and get you vetted talent, but open up the market for that audience to land into, companies like PhonePe, Cred, Razorpay, so on and so forth. I do think that there is a lot of really good talent in those markets that just don't have access to the startup universe, because startups don't have the time to go through, a million resumes to find the gems. But at the same time, the gems don't have access to the startups because there is no known path, because college hiring doesn't help them get there. So they get stuck in this loop. And then ton of them end up in like a TCS Infosys as their first job, because that's what comes to placement in colleges. And I think that's a little bit of a, underutilization of their own potential. So
that's true. I think at our country level, right? I think demand supply mismatch is huge, and
yes,
it's not because of, I think, supply not being available. It's also because of not matchmaking, or not a good matchmaking, or not a good upskilling being available.
yes,
Right.
yes.
And someone who, like you, who is trying to solve that problem, I think will be, I think, huge contribution to both the sides of it.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. On that note, guys, I think we've answered most of the commonly asked questions. It was a lot to get through, but I really appreciate Vishal spending time on a Saturday, and all of you guys being here. I really enjoyed the conversation. I felt like I learned quite a bit. If you guys, hopefully you guys did too. See you guys in future series. We'll be having speakers like Vishal here. But thank you so much, Vishal, for taking time. Really, really, really appreciate it. Was a good use of an hour on Saturday. Thank you so much.
No, it was pleasure. Honestly, I think always good to kind of, share what you are doing, and learning is always two-way, right? Whenever you're talking, you're
Yes.
bouncing your thoughts, and it evolves further. So it's always useful.
Yes. It's amazing to see how many people are, they have either been exposed to PhonePe culture or have gone through an interview experience and are super pleased about it. That talks a lot about, I think that's extremely hard to achieve at the scale at which you guys are. And for that to always randomly happen anywhere and everywhere. So
Sure.
kudos to that. Thank you so much for joining in. Thanks,
No,
everyone.
thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.